This might sound a bit weird, but I'm writing a story backwards at the moment. Not just planning it out or just plotting it out, but actually writing it backwards. And it's not even going as badly as I thought. In fact, it might even have changed how I write permanently. If you're looking to break out of writer's block or shake up your writing a little bit, then honestly, this might be the way to do it. And I'm going to talk about why. So let's get started. For some context on why I'm writing something totally backwards, last year I wrote a novella in Flash, which is basically a novella made up of 20 pieces of Flash fiction. It's called Gold Fury, and all of the stories within it link together in some way, and I really enjoyed the fact that they all link together. I really like that linking element, so I wanted to do that again. So I started another novella in Flash, but I thought, obviously, why not do this one backwards? Alright, it might not be the obvious thing to do. In fact, you're probably wondering why. It actually started, as a lot of my writing does, as one small idea for one Flash fiction story. I wrote that story and I finished it and I liked it and I wanted to write more. The only problem was it was already finished. If I carried on, I'd just be ruining the ending, so there was only one direction I could go in, which was backwards. Now, I could just write this story in reverse and then when it's finished, just turn it around and it would read normally and no one would ever really know that it was written backwards. But I don't think I want to do that. In fact, I know I don't. Not only do I want to write this story backwards, I want it to be read backwards as well. The very first story in this novella is where the plot actually ends, so by the time I've written the rest of it, eventually, the final story will be where everything first began. I know it sounds weird, but I'm determined to do it this way. Having said that, aside from maybe the novelty of it, you're probably still wondering, but why? There's more to it. The truth is, another reason I'm trying this weird way of writing is that I couldn't think what to write. I had that urge that you probably know well yourself, where you want to write something longer than just a simple flash fiction or a short story, but I didn't have anywhere to go. But I didn't want to write a novel. I'm still not feeling a novel coming to me, and that's alright, that's fine. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're in a similar position, maybe you just finished something longer and you're just looking for a change. A single piece of flash fiction or a short story just wasn't going to cut it. I was just wanting to write something a little longer, and this way I get to try something I've never tried before or never even considered before, in fact, and I can also report back on it on this channel in case it's of any use to any other writers. The obvious questions I thought I might be able to shed some light on were, firstly, does it work? Is it harder, the same, or easier than writing normally? And what do you need to do differently if you're writing a backwards story? So already having written quite a few stories this way, and I've been doing it for over a month now, I thought I'd use what limited experience I have from that to answer those questions based on how it's been for me. Firstly, does it work? This one's quite hard to answer. Firstly, from a writer's perspective, I've found that it definitely works. I've spent far less time agonising on where I need to go next with my story, which as mainly a discovery writer, that's something I tend to lose a lot of time to. Even if I'm just planning, if the next steps of the story don't immediately come to me, I tend to get quite frustrated. Writing backwards, instead of asking myself, where do I go from here? I find that I've been asking myself, how did I get here? And it's causing me to innovate way more with my plot than I usually would. It's totally eliminated that feeling that you sometimes get that everything's just a little bit too easy. You know that feeling where maybe you've overplanned a little bit, or you're just rushing through to a significant part of the book and everything leading up to that just comes a little bit too smoothly and a little bit too easily. When you read it back, it just feels like something's not quite there. Writing backwards has totally eliminated that problem for me, and every chapter feels like both a continuation of the story and something brand new at the same time, which is proving really fun to write. But maybe the more important question isn't does it work for a writer, and instead it's does it work for a reader? Does it read well? Does it make sense? Is it easy to follow? Because I would imagine reading a story backwards isn't for everyone, and in fact it's probably going to put off some readers. I don't think I can truly answer that question myself, first of all because my story's not finished yet, and secondly because you can never really experience your own story as a reader, not properly anyway. But I have shared the story or my progress so far with one person, my wife Hayley, and here's what she said about it. It's not hard to follow, and it stops the process of guessing ahead what's going to happen, so there's more surprises. So that's encouraging. If you're a writer that likes to surprise your readers, and I like to do that personally, I like to make sure all of my stories are unpredictable, or at least not predictable, which feels like a slightly different thing to me, then maybe have a crack at this, it might be for you. The next question then, is it harder to write or easier or about the same? Maybe it's just because I want to write something longer that isn't a novel because I just don't want to plot my way through another novel right now. But writing this way backwards has actually been considerably easier for me than writing a story chronologically. You could argue that it's just because it's something new, and maybe it's just the novelty of doing something I've never done before that's making it feel that way, but to me it's just been more enjoyable to write this way, as well as a little bit easier and smoother. I feel like I'm finding out new things about how I write, but at the same time I'm writing a bit more precisely and accurately than I usually do. I'm taking each flash fiction as it comes and figuring out as I write it how it fits into the novella as a whole, and so far I like the shape that it's taken. It seems to be coming together in a way that I'm quite happy with. So yeah, weirdly it's easier to write than plenty of other stuff that I've written before. Can't really tell you why that is exactly, but I'm just going to strike while the iron's hot and try and finish it. That just leaves the last question. If you're writing a story backwards, what do you need to do differently? Well, you'd think that structure would be totally backwards in a story that's written backwards. I looked at 3-act structure in my last video, by the way, so I'll put a link up there in case you want to catch that. I thought it would make sense that if you're writing a story backwards, with the finale being at the beginning, then surely the action is just going to decrease for the whole length of the entire story, and it's going to get less and less interesting from that point onwards to the end. But actually, I was wrong about that. The fact that the action of the finale kicks off the whole story kind of mirrors how there's usually a hook in most stories. Then naturally, as the reader reads on, their interest is less in that action because they've already seen that, and it moves towards something else, which is the eventual ending and figuring out how all of this got started. It's more or less the same as in a normal chronological story where the hook gets their attention and then they slowly move to focus on the ending. So as the story goes on, I want to make sure I keep asking questions that I can answer further down the line so that I stay focused on the root cause of the problem that began the entire story. And actually, doing things backwards in this way doesn't even feel all that different. I'd say the biggest difference between writing this and writing something chronologically is the gaps between stories, or the gaps between chapters if you were going to do this with a novel. Those are where I can really feel the difference, because when you're writing a chronological story, to some extent you can just carry on where you left off from the last chapter. But writing backwards, you have to jump to the start of the previous scene and then catch up with yourself a bit. Other than that though, it's all the same skills and even the same structure really. So I'm just excited to keep writing it and finish it so that people can read it. One thing I'm looking forward to finding out when I finish the story is, having written it backwards, if I then read it backwards, which would really be forwards, stay with me. I suppose if I read it in a chronological way, in the order things really happen, can you tell? Is it going to be obvious it wasn't written in order? And is it going to feel different? Something tells me it's going to be noticeable and that something will feel slightly off about it, but who knows? If you're stuck with your plot right now, or you've got writer's block like I said before, maybe try writing that ending that you already know about and just working back from there. It might actually be easier. You don't even have to write the whole thing backwards either. You could just write the ending and then plot backwards from there. Figure out what's going to happen and then write that forwards. And if you're stuck in a rut and the idea of slowly planning a story through that difficult beginning and then that sagging middle and working your way up to an ending just really doesn't appeal to you, this might be a way to break that up a little bit. It also might be a way to add some more surprises into your plot that even you don't see coming. My experience is that it's really engaged my creativity and it's made me think differently about how I'm approaching a story, so it could do the same thing for you. I make no promises that it's going to work for you, by the way, because I can't even promise myself it's going to work in my story. I'll let you know. But at least if it doesn't work, as always, I'll have learned something. If you want to learn more about flash fiction, I've got an online course about that. Details about that and all of my other services that I offer writers are on my website, linked down below. If you want to get in touch with some other writers, feel free to join our community Discord server. Links for that are down below too. We're all friendly. We'd love to have you. Let me know if you liked this video or if you thought it was weird and pointless. Thanks so much for watching. Happy writing.